And we are starting a new chapter of our, we have a reference textbook. You don't have the textbook, but you don't need, right? But this reference textbook is how I follow the topics that we are covering, okay? Now is the topic from chapter 6, radical equations. And we have 3 weeks to cover the chapter 6, and starting today, starting now. This last week of February is about chapter 6, and then we will have the 2 first weeks of March to finish chapter 6 on March 12th. And also March 12th is the end of the 3rd quarter. We will have the tests, chapter 6 tests, and it's the last day of the 3rd quarter, the first day before the spring break. And also we started today the countdown for spring break, right? Only 3 weeks away from spring break. And we have a lot of work to do. Radical equations. The things that we will cover are first let's understand this expression, this word, the radical equation. We've been working last week on chapter 5, right? The last 3 weeks is about rational expressions. And rational expression is about the ratio. You're going to have numerator, you're going to have a denominator. If you have fractions in your expression, that means it is a rational expression, right? If you have fractions. Now we are starting chapter 6. It's a new topic, it's a new word that's going to work. Not rational anymore. We will work with radical equations. Now, pay attention because they're kind of similar words. They start with R and A, radical, rational. They kind of sound the same, but they are completely different words. See? Now we are working with radical expressions, and radical instead of fractions. We will work with, let's check a few examples. Examples of radical expressions. Square root of 2, x plus square root of b squared minus a, cube root of x squared plus 1. So we will work now with another thing. We will work with roots, right? Very important word, roots. Instead of fractions, the rational expressions, we work with fractions. Now radical expressions, we will work with roots. Square roots, cube roots, fourth root, fifth root, any kind of root. Lots of roots ahead of us. We can have a mix. We can have rational expressions that also are radical expressions, or radical expressions that have fractions and also are rational expressions. It is possible, but we will focus on equations or expressions, and later on equations that have roots, that have radicals, okay? That is a very important thing to remember, because if you are distracted, you can mix up, you can think we are still talking about the previous topic, rational expressions. But no, it's a brand new topic, radical expressions. Okay? And the things we are covering are 6.1, definition of nth root, 6.2, rational exponents, 6.3, simplifying, 6.4, addition and subtraction, 6.5, multiplication, and 6.7, solving radical equations. That's all, lots of things that we have to cover on this 3 weeks. We will start with something basic, very simple. but important, because there's a concept, a couple of concepts that are going to work today, very subtle, very simple things, but you need to understand so later you don't mess up, okay? So, definition of a square root. Basically, the square root is the reverse of operation of squaring a number. If you're squaring number 6, you're going to have 6 squared equals 36. If you're asking, someone asks you, what is the square root of 36, or give me one square root of 36, you can say, yes, I know that 6 squared is 36, so one of the square roots of 36 is 6. 6 is an answer. But be careful, because when we're talking about square root, we can have more than one number that a squared is equals to 36. If you notice, negative 6 will also work, because negative 6 squared is equals 36 as well. That means most numbers will have two square roots, one negative, another one positive. Okay? Definition: b is a square root of a if b squared equals to a. Let's check examples. What are the square roots of 25? So, letter A, square root of 25. What are the square roots of 25? I need you to answer, someone to answer me. Let me select someone that knows what are the square roots of 25. So, you will. Do you know you will, or let me say Maddie? You will and Maddie. Do you know what are the square roots of 25? Send me a message if you know. Or anyone else, if you want, you can also send a message. What are the square roots of 25? Send me a message. So maybe it's 5, and you will, maybe it's 5. But pay attention, I'm asking here, Kalia, thank you Kalia, 5. And Adrian, 5, thank you all, yes, great answers. But pay attention, because I'm asking, what are the square roots of 25? When I'm talking, you don't see the symbol here, right? The square root symbol. I'm asking to identify the square roots. And all that means all the numbers that square is equals to 25. So 5 is the right answer, is one of the right answers. Yeah. Another answer is negative 5. Yes, you will. Thank you. Negative 5 is another answer. So the square roots of 25 are 5 and negative 5. If you think about the next question, the square roots of 49. And it's the same thinking, the same thing we will do. What are the square roots of 49? We know 7 squared is 49, but negative 7 is also 49. Negative 7. 20 minutes, that's a long time. I think the only number, I cannot think about any other number, but I think the only number that will have only one square root, and think about it. Oops, let me fix this. This is B, and now let us see. What are the square roots of 0? And 0, you have to think about a number that multiplies by itself is equals to 0, and the only number that multiplies by itself is equals to 0 is 0. So 0, as I remember, is the only real number that have just one square root. Okay? And we also have, what's the other? Negative 9. negative 9. Now, what are the square roots of negative 9? What are the numbers that multiplied by itself? It's going to be equals to negative 9. That's the question. Can you think about one number, two numbers that multiply by itself is equals to negative 9? Let me tell you something. If we are talking about negative numbers, if you try to multiply a negative number by another negative number, you will have negative times negative equals positive. That means there is no way you multiply two negative numbers to find another negative number. There's no way, not a chance, impossible. So you cannot multiply two negative numbers and find another negative number. That means this is not a real number, okay? On the quiz, you're going to say there's no solution, no real number solution. Okay? When you have the question asking, what is the square root of a negative number? The answer is not a real number, no solution. Okay? Now, pay attention. There's another way of asking this kind of question. Don't mix things up. This is a different way. Look, simplify the square roots. And now you are given the symbol, the square root symbol like this, and here a number, and you have to find another number, right? When you have something like that, you're going to answer only with the positive square root. Only with the positive, okay? So let's say, letter A, square root of 36. You're not going to say 6 or negative 6, no. When you have the symbol, when you have the question like this, simplify the square roots. The answer here is going to be always the positive. Letter B. Now we have square root of 4 over 9. You can break it down as the square root of the numerator over the square root of the denominator. The square root of 4 is 2, square root of 9 is 3, and the answer is 2 over 3. Positive, okay? Positive. And finally, let's see letter C. Square root of 0.04, and you can represent this as square root of 4 over 100. Okay, you can break it down as the square root of 4 over square root of 100. Square root of 4, 2. Square root of 110. Simplifying, because you can divide both numerator and denominator by 2, 1 over 5. That's it. Now, please tell me, do you have any questions? Because those are a few simple but very basic concepts, and if you don't understand this, in the future, a few days later from today, you're going to mess up stuff. You're going to start to getting confused. Okay, so very important. You understand that most numbers, and basically only 0, I remember, is an exception, but most numbers are going to have 2 square roots, one negative and another one positive. But when you're asked to simplify an expression that have the square root symbol, you're going to use only the positive the positive square roots. Okay. Any questions? Can you understand the difference from this kind of question to the second way? You will have only one answer here on the second situation, on the second kind of asking the question about square roots. If you don't have questions, I think we can practice. But still, if you want, we can ask your questions during the quiz. But now, let's try to solve our bell work. Let me see if you remember the very important words that I mentioned during the lesson. It's part of most plants and part of some squares, part of any ancestry and part of your hair. What is the word that best fits this riddle? And let me check how many students we have to answer this. And root is the right answer, yes. Root is part of a plant, have some square roots, and the ancestry are your roots, right? Your ancestors, and your hair have roots. So this is important because root, we will talk a lot about root. Root is a synonym, it's the same as radical, okay, in math. So root is the same as radical in math, and we're talking about radical equations. We'll be talking about equations that have roots. All right, let's work on our quiz. Simplify. If we're talking here about simplify, it's going to be only the positive root. Write the answer as a fraction, not decimal. If there is no real solution, write NS. That means no solution. For letter A, square root of 25, again, only the positive answer, the positive root is 5. But pay attention, because sometimes you're going to have the negative sign. If the negative sign is inside the root, that means you're not going to have an answer. It's a no solution. B is 7. That's right, Jacob. And the bell work. Let me show you again, Cynthia. The bell work is roots. The answer is roots. Okay, which is the same thing as radical. Okay, Cynthia, thank you. On letter C, now you have the negative sign in front of the roots. When you have something like that, then you answer with the negative root. And the negative root of 25 is negative 5. Okay? Oops. But if the negative sign is inside the root, then you're not going to have a real solution. If it's inside, you have the square root of a negative number, and there's no way we can find as a real solution for the square root of a negative number. Okay? Now, I'll give you a couple of minutes so you can work on the questions. Very basic questions, and maybe a few questions are tricky. Maybe M or N, I think, because you have to factor out. But all the other questions are not so hard. And I will work on the attendance for 1 minute, and I'll be right back. We can work together.